After two races, two thrilling weekends of this new era of Formula One, it looked to be the Ferrari and Red Bull show. But with Alpine and McLaren seemingly finding pace this weekend, are we about to see new contenders enter the mix? It's time for qualifying for the 2022 Australian Grand Prix here at Melbourne's Albert Park circuit. Welcome, folks, to F1 TV and to this 14-turn, 5.279 kilometre circuit changed for this year. 3 DRS zones, a change from the 4 just overnight. It's made the teams change their setups on a lot of cars. That's a little bit of head scratching and a slightly altered order from what we thought the order was after free practice 1 and 2. There, two of the major changes. The new run through with the chicane being straightened out on Riverside Drive, and a great overtaking opportunity down there at the new turn 11. For now, though, it's all about getting around this track as fast as you can and as fast as you dare, most likely on that softest of all, C5 Pirelli P0 tyre. Welcome then, folks, around the world here to F1 TV and the F1 Live channel. Delighted that you've chosen to join us for qualifying for round 3 of the 2022 World Championship. Will Buxton with you, and I'm delighted as always to be joined by Jolyon Palmer and Sam Collins. And guys, what we thought we knew from Friday and FP1 and FP2, which was Ferrari utterly in the ascendancy, has all been changed overnight. This slight alteration to the DRS zones on the track has really thrown a curveball at people. McLaren fastest in free practice 3. Fernando Alonso in the Alpine looking sensational. Max Verstappen scratching his head in the Red Bull.
Well, number one thing to learn, never think we know anything from Friday running. Even if they hadn't changed it, free practice 1 and 2 are always not that representative. This is when the talking stops and we're going to see who's there. Who's there on paper right now? It's Lando Norris in the McLaren. Is that pace genuine? Fernando Alonso's been rapid as well in the Alpine. Is that pace genuine? I still think we're looking at a Ferrari Red Bull fight, but the midfielders, they're genuinely close.
Well, the change to the DRS zones, we saw it in free practice 3 really clearly with the Ferraris. The change of not having DRS along that long lakeside section means the Ferrari is porpoising like crazy, and I think that's having a negative effect on the lap times for both Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. So I think you're actually going to see Ferrari struggling a little bit more than we've been seeing all through the weekend.
Well, we talk about struggling. It is a struggle at the moment for Aston Martin. Sebastian Vettel returning from COVID-19. His engine went in FP1. He missed the whole of FP2, crashed early on in FP3, and then towards the end of FP3 this morning, Lance Stroll put it in the barriers as well. The team in a race against time to rebuild those cars and even make it into qualifying here today. Sebastian Vettel, who has never failed to make it to Q3 here at Albert Park, may even struggle to make it out on track. But Jolyon, this is a track with some major changes since we last raced here a couple of seasons ago. And they really start from the start down there at turn 1 and continue all the way around.
They've widened a lot of the medium speed, slow speed corners. That includes turn 1. It includes turn 3, the right-hander at the end of the first, or the second long straight, if you include the start-finish straight. Turn 6 used to be a sort of right-left into an arcing right chicane. That's now been quickened up a lot, so significantly quicker. That's now almost a high-speed corner. But the biggest change of all comes after that. The old chicane of turns 9 and 10, again, used to be a bumpy braking zone into a right-left, which would take you to the lakeside straight, full throttle section. That's gone completely. So the full throttle section is absolutely huge, out of turn 6 all the way up to the porpoising straight into turn 9. And then there's a slight tweak of turn 11 as well to make it tighter, and braking there is particularly tricky. There's changes aplenty. Most drivers have had loads of laps. Aston Martin, the notable exceptions this week. They're going to be hard pushed to make it through into Q2 with either car. But here we go.
Qualifying is underway. Can Carlos Sainz take a first career pole position here today. He has looked rapid all the way through this weekend. Looked to be the favourite of the two Ferraris, certainly in the early running yesterday, but Charles Leclerc really got into his stride. Max Verstappen was looking good yesterday as well, but this morning, Sam Collins, Max Verstappen unhappy. His fastest lap time set on the medium, couldn't get to grips with the soft, and has been unhappy with the setup of his car all the way through this weekend.
And one of the things I think is worth noting is the soft here in Melbourne is very soft. It's the softest tyre that Pirelli produces, which should mean that that's a really strong qualifying tyre, almost going back to the old days of Pirelli, where you had the Minardis running up front on those super soft Q tyres. It's almost in that degree, but something we've seen through the practice sessions is that the soft tyre might produce its best running after a couple of laps out there. So you might see drivers running for 2 or 3 laps to get the best lap time in. And Mario Isola, as some of you who were watching the pre-qualifying show will have heard, was saying that the tyre after the first flying lap actually becomes a bit more predictable, gives the driver a bit more confidence.
Okay, Yuki, we focus on tires and brakes and we synchronize all the gears.
When Tsunoda was going slowly there, I was hoping we weren't going to get a radio of a problem for him. Remember, that's exactly what he had in Jeddah in Q1, and then didn't even start the race in Jeddah as well.
We had no laps for him in qualifying or the race last time out.
No, and then on the out lap again, it looks like he's going slowly through 9 and 10, and we get a team radio. But it's just about preparing the brakes and the tyres, getting the temperature to the right window. As Sam has said, the tyres they're difficult to manage in terms of getting the optimum lap time on the first flying lap. In theory, that's still the quickest one. If you can get the tyre working on lap 1, the first push, that's your magic lap. But it hasn't been easy to do, and many drivers just finding lap time on subsequent laps, and that's why we got the likes of Charles Leclerc already out and starting a first flying lap on his softs now.
So we sit on board with Charles Leclerc through the reprofile turns 1 and 2 on the run down. Turn 3 coming up. Could potentially be an overtaking point, but it is still a fairly difficult corner to make a move into the left-hander at 4, and then turn 5, where you'll notice the wall has been pulled closer to the track, but it's not quite the challenge we were anticipating. This then one of the huge changes on the track, going 70 kilometers an hour faster there through turn 6, and then it is a flat out blast, foot planted to the floor. This is where the chicane used to be. No more. A straight blast down Lakeside Drive into the fearsome switch left and right that used to be turns 11 and 12, now known as 9 and 10, into that left, into the right. We've seen twitches through there. It's where Sebastian Vettel found the barrier earlier on today. Now into a decent overtaking spot, as it will be, hopefully, for the race. A 90-degree right at turn 11. The right again at turn 12 will pull us into the penultimate corner, the left-hander at 13. Max Verstappen finding it very tricky through here and losing the rear and spinning out on a number of occasions this weekend. The right-hander takes us back onto the start finish straight here at Albert Park and over the line for Charles Leclerc. It is a 1 minute 19.391.
Good luck from Leclerc. Yellow flag in sector 3 as someone had a bit of a whoopsie already. Green again, so maybe someone just having a trip through the gravel at turn 12, possibly a bit of a run wide. Bad news for Haas fans. Schumacher and Magnussen are either side of Alex Albon. Now, Haas have been pretty average through practice so far. I wondered if they might be able to find a bit more pace in this qualifying session, given we've seen them into Q3 in both the first 2 qualifyings. But sandwiching a Williams, who we know are going to be struggling to make it through into Q2, is a tough start.
And this is a decent lap from Lando Norris. He goes into P2, not far off Charles Leclerc. 119.391 plays 119.764, and McLaren will be buoyed by their FP3 and by that lap there from Lando Norris, as we get a first view of Max Verstappen on the soft tyre, the tyre of course which he couldn't make work in FP3.
Pouncing hard over the curb, exit of turn 4, bit of a floor strike there as he hit it, and again running very low to the ground, the Red Bull coming through the exit of turn 6, ending sector 1. Sergio Perez on a flying lap as well. That's the comparison with Charles Leclerc, our fastest man. Leclerc's not all that much quicker than Norris at the moment, who was our fastest man from earlier on. Norris has then got a second, give or take, back to the midfield at this stage, midfield led by Yuki Tsunoda. The Red Bull's looking quick though.
Yeah, Perez faster than Verstappen through Sector 2, but it's Sector 3 where Ferrari have had the legs on Red Bull, and Red Bull have really had to push on and actually ended up making mistakes. Verstappen always deep there into turn 11 throughout the weekend, and this turn 13 where he's been finding things particularly difficult. Sainz now goes top at 1:19.179. That's your new benchmark time. DRS open for Max Verstappen down the straight, and over the line for him it is a 1:19.406, only good enough for third place, but keep your eyes on Sergio Perez behind, who will cut the timing beam in a 1:19.307.
Something that's happening this year is Perez is way more competitive in qualifying.
He's
New
picked it up, hasn't he?
Well, it's a completely new generation of cars. It's different to drive than the previous generation, where Verstappen was so comfortable, particularly in qualifying. That is the reason we had the yellow flag out briefly. Then it was Nicholas Latifi, who desperately just needs a clean session here, having crashed in qualifying and the race in Jeddah, and he almost put it straight in the wall on his first flyer, skewed it sideways, and a bit of drama for him, and that's one lap aborted then. But yeah, Perez is there, new generation of car, get the pace out of it slightly more differently than the last generation, where you can carry the speed with the huge downforce. Now there is the downforce in the high speed, but the low speed is a bit more fiddly. We've got another yellow, and that looked like it was a recovering Valtteri Bottas, didn't it, at turn 11?
Did indeed. First pole position last time out in Jeddah. First career pole position for Sergio Perez after 11 years of trying, showing that he has lost none of his pace and in fact is finding his form at exactly the right time. Very, very busy track out there right now. Traffic will be an issue, Sam.
Yeah, just looking at a run characteristic of the cars, they're going out, setting a fast flying lap, then doing a slowdown lap, then doing another flying lap. So it's what we were talking about a little bit earlier on. It looks like these soft tyres, these C5 tyres, are holding on a little bit longer than we thought.
Fernando Alonso out on track as Leclerc goes top, takes us into the 1:18s. It's a 1:18.881. Nice first sector from Fernando Alonso, who showed brilliant pace throughout Friday, throughout this morning, and quite incredibly, coming into this session, is still 50-1 with the bookies for pole position. Incredible odds.
That's amazing. But that is his second flying lap on that set of tyres, with a coast down lap in between.
Leclerc's at the top.
Absolutely.
This is Alonso's first flyer, and he's on the fastest middle sector. Everyone's getting twitchy at turn 11. Bottas has had a moment, I'm sure, but we haven't seen the replay of it yet. Latifi, we know, has dropped it into the gravel. Alonso then is through there okay, but just had to correct the car with a bit of opposite lock. Now he swings it through the right-hander, just blending the throttle, and opens the DRS to the line. The Alpine's been quick so far. Ocon's gone 7th. Alonso goes 5th.
So Alonso to P5 with the fastest middle sector of all. That Alpine is looking incredibly competitive with those Red Bulls and the Ferraris ahead. We sit on board now though with Max Verstappen, your reigning world champion, currently 4th fastest and half a second off the pace as Valtteri Bottas jumps up into P5. Was saying yesterday he expects to be fighting for a top 6 in the Grand Prix this weekend, and once again looking punchy in qualifying.
Verstappen's flying on this one. Can he keep it together through this final sector though? It's just tentative on the turn in for 11. Very committed at 12. Gets it wide onto the Astro, but managed to pull the car back to the right hand side for braking for 13. Then just modulating the throttle through the final corner. This is a much better lap for Verstappen. The Ferraris have done 2 flyers. They're half a second up, but not anymore. Fastest final sector as well for Max. That's where Red Bull have been struggling a little bit more. So second flying lap has been the one for Leclerc, for Verstappen, for Sainz, but not for Sergio Perez.
No, and that's in Ferrari territory in that third sector where Verstappen really made the difference. So as things stand, 8.5 minutes-ish remaining in the session. It's Leclerc from Verstappen, Sainz and Perez, then Bottas, Alonso, the 2 McLarens, Ocon and Gasly. But of course, as we know, in Q1 it is all about those to be eliminated, and as things stand right now, the 2 Aston Martins do not have a time on the board, have not left the garage. As I understand it, Sebastian Vettel is undergoing a gearbox change in that car after a heavy hit this morning, not just on the front but critically on the rear of the car. They're also struggling to get Lance Stroll's car put back together. No times yet on the board for Mercedes, but now we sit with Lewis Hamilton, who is just about to launch himself into a flyer. Nicholas Latifi in that elimination zone as well.
Norris into 4 tenths away from Leclerc. This is the McLaren that I saw in pre-season testing that looked like it had a bit of pace. Where that pace went in Bahrain who knows? It was halfway to coming back in Saudi last time out, but now they look like they're in there with Sainz and Perez right now. Lando Norris doing a phenomenal job. Let's see what his compatriot Lewis Hamilton can do then. Mercedes have been a little bit hit and miss so far this weekend. Overall miss, but Hamilton looked like he had a turn of speed earlier on, but couldn't string a lap together. Looks like a tidy enough first sector though for Lewis. No big corrections at the wheel. Has he got pace? Well, he's 3/10 up on Yuki Tsunoda in the first sector. He's a 10th down on Fernando Alonso though, and Alonso is absolutely flying on this lap.
Don't forget, folks, those times that you see at the bottom are the times for elimination, not the top time. So 3/10 to the good will not be 3/10 to the good on Charles Leclerc, just as it is now half a second to the good over that P15 time of Yuki Tsunoda. That's the time that's important. That's the point of elimination, and that is the purpose and the point of Q1. Lewis Hamilton, oh no, and again, is that T11 proving tricky?
Everyone's struggling there at turn 11. There's a bit of a tailwind, then missing a bit of downforce. It's a newly profiled corner as well. It's a bigger braking zone, and it just invites you in slightly deeper. Now Lewis is struggling with the rear end. The car looked okay through the first part of the lap. It's getting away and getting a bit scruffy, and he's only 10th, but there's plenty more to come there for Lewis. And George Russell pipping him by a good 3/10 in the end.
As the Red Bulls have woken up and come out and started setting their fast times, it is worth noting there is that qualifying characteristic. A lot of cars going out and just staying out, putting the laps in. Traffic, though, as you saw there, also becoming a problem. So even if a car goes out, sets a good time, like Max Verstappen is about to, I think he'll keep going and do another time afterwards.
Verstappen, at the moment, just 44 thousandths of a second off Charles Leclerc's top time, punching in a decent looking lap here as well, the reigning world champion. It is Leclerc on top with a 1:18.881. This Q1 and Q2 for Verstappen will be as much about just dialing that in. That car that looked so uncomfortable for him earlier this weekend, just gaining his comfort levels in it, does go top by a whopping 3/10 of a second.
He gained a lot of time in that final sector. That's where Max has been struggling so much through the weekend, where he had a spin earlier on, but now he looks much more settled in his Red Bull, unlike Lewis, and that's exactly where he had a big moment down at turn 11, turned it in, bit of oversteer, missed the apex and lost a heap of time.
And then I think Hamilton encountered Yuki Tsunoda.
Yeah, we are the bouncing there. Was crazy. Copy it.
Aye. I mean, look, if the car is bouncing like this in the Grand Prix for these guys, that is going to be an incredibly physical and incredibly unhappy Australian Grand Prix for Ferrari. And it's been notable this weekend all the way through how extreme the porpoising, bouncing, call it what you will, has been in those red cars.
Well, it's because they've had to go to... we're getting Aston Martin.
Great job from Aston Martin.
It's because we're going to see, because they're running through that high-speed section without DRS now, the rear load is increased significantly. The rear wing is doing its job rather than being open with the DRS there. And that is just creating that porpoising so aggressively. But look, it looked like 10 centimetres of movement up and down on his head.
Leclerc had the same on that first lap. We rode on board with him. The Ferrari is porpoising aggressively. Guys, there's only 4 minutes left of Q1.
It's gone by fast. Kevin Magnussen will be hoping for a bit of pace, but look at that.
He's struggling. They've gone out. All the drivers outside of the top 10 have gone out on track with loads of time left to spare, so they can get at least 2 flying laps in to get out of the drop zone. The bottom 5 go out. At the moment, that's Zhou, Tsunoda, Latifi, and the 2 Aston Martins. Stroll out on track, but it looks like Sebastian Vettel is not going to be getting out for the moment. And Stroll has a huge amount of work to do. I cannot see him making it through into Q2. So that eases the pressure on the others. And at the moment, Alex Albon's done a decent job in the Williams, up in 13th, ahead of the 2 Haas cars. Every lap counts now. You don't want to be in the drop zone. You don't want to pick up traffic or a late yellow flag or a red flag now that can scupper any progress. You've got to keep yourself floating in the top 15.
Nice middle sector from Kevin Magnussen as Lewis Hamilton jumps up to P8. Magnussen, does he improve to 14th? He does. Schumacher over the line, improves to 13th. Great drive from Mick Schumacher there as Yuki Tsunoda jumps up to 12th, dropping Albon down into the drop zone as Gasly crosses the line, stays P13. Can George Russell improve from P11? He can, to P9. We keep our eyes peeled for Nicholas Latifi coming into your picture now. He will be trying to move up from a P18, but he cannot do so at the moment. 3.5 seconds off the pace as Joe jumps up on a 1:19.910 to drop Schumacher into the drop zone.
Well, as there's a lot of traffic on track, we're seeing a few drivers backing off, going for a build lap. They're going to go again, try and get through to Q2. Well, one driver who could be in a little bit of hot water with race control is Pierre Gasly. The AlphaTauri team are under investigation for an unsafe release out of his pit garage.
Gasly's not got the pace though, has he? He's down in 13th. AlphaTauri are struggling. They may well get through into Q2 because Aston Martin are struggling more than anybody is struggling. But Gasly's behind Tsunoda, which is not all that often.
Oh, and there's a big one, and that is Latifi. I'm afraid, again, a big moment for Nicholas Latifi in qualifying. And he looks to be okay, but that's a nasty, messy incident for Nicholas Latifi with 2 minutes left on the clock. Red flags out. I was just about to say that Lance Stroll had aborted his lap. Sebastian Vettel standing in the back of the Aston Martin garage, so it appears that both of those Astons will be out here in Q1. So too, though, will be Nicholas Latifi. And with the red flag out, it would seem...
Yeah, it looks to me, Will, just as we cut to the accident there, it looked like Latifi may have got tangled up with a bit of traffic
He's
here.
tripped over Stroll, hasn't he?
I think he has, and Lance Stroll, as we said, had aborted his lap. His front right is definitely damaged on Lance Stroll's car there. We need to see a replay to see exactly what happened, and we get that replay now. There is Lance Stroll coming back on. There is Latifi.
Latifi's he's got so far out of the way then of Stroll, but then Stroll slows down. Latifi comes through. Oh, no!
Man, what
Come on!
done?
My word.
What on earth is Stroll doing? Latifi let him go through. Looked like he was completely off the track.
Latifi, man, what are the
No.
is you just doing? You just
No.
hit me, man.
Let's look at Stroll. Is he looking in the mirrors? No, he's looking the wrong way.
Yeah, you can't have that, Lance.
What is he doing? That's not what you... This is...
I mean, the team should have been informing him that the car's coming up. Now,
That's-
let's watch
that's-
the onboard here.
That's all on Lance.
So, look at Latifi. Head to the left, and he's just getting as far off the track as he possibly can for Stroll. Stroll's going to come through. The Aston Martin puts a squeeze on Latifi there. Now he's backed off, so he's obviously frustrated that Latifi hasn't let him go earlier. Now, what on earth is Stroll doing from that point? Latifi cannot be more on the right. He's almost on the grass, and Stroll turns to the right. Not acceptable.
Don't understand what he was doing.
Are you okay?
He wasn't looking in his mirrors.
Are you okay?
Car's destroyed.
yeah, that's agree with you on that, Jolien. There is only one point of blame there, and it's entirely on the shoulders of Lance Stroll. That's just basic driving, and that's not the level. It's not the level you expect.
It is inexcusable for two drivers on a slow lap. Neither of them are pushing. Latifi was quite clearly trying to get as far out of the way as Stroll as possible. It is inexcusable to have a crash of that impact on slow laps. They're not even pushing for a flying lap. It's a sort of street circuit in essence, and that is just a ridiculous crash to have. And Stroll is going to have a lot of questions to answer.
Yeah, and to his boys in the garage as well, who've just worked their socks off over the last 2 hours to rebuild that car. What it does do, Sam, though, is possibly gives Aston Martin a little bit more time to rebuild Sebastian Vettel's car.
Yeah, there's 2 minutes and 1 second on the clock, which is just enough time for Vettel's car to get out on track and get one qualifying lap in, if they can bolt it back together in time. Now, you saw the German driver with his crash helmet ready, just perched on the top of his head, so there is an opportunity for Aston Martin to get back out on track. But just to add my opinion to this on that shunt there, Lance Stroll, I have no idea what he was doing, but that was clearly he turned across onto the TV.
It was basic.
Either it's a terrible bit of driving, or it's just an absolute lack of awareness that he has shown in the past as well. And it's going to be big questions on how you can have that accident at a reduced speed in qualifying when you have to be aware of cars around you. You have to be aware. It's not good. If Vettel, even if he does get in the car, by the way, he's going to qualify last. He's not driven in FP2. He's not driven in FP3. The last thing he's done is just crash the car at turn 10. There is no chance in 2 minutes remaining he can get in the car and deliver something acceptable. So there is no saving grace really for Aston Martin, other than have a car back that doesn't crash, I guess.
Well, he might be ahead of Latifi, Magnussen, who
He
both
won't.
need to. But he's
won't
got a
get
lot of work to
Magnussen.
do. But he'll definitely he could get in front of Latifi, certainly in front of his teammate. If his teammate, well, there's going to be some stern conversations after this session, aren't there?
I mean, stern conversations, because frankly, that's just embarrassing. Utterly embarrassing at this level, on this stage. It's, as Jolyon said, it's unacceptable. Utterly unacceptable. And, you know, you've got to feel sorry for Latifi in all of that as well. Completely the innocent victim.
It's the last thing he needed.
Well, exactly. After the last couple of weekends, after those crashes there in Jeddah.
And when Stroll's going slowly, as Latifi tries to get out of the way, to the point where he's almost entirely off the track and he's just waiting and waiting for Stroll to come through. Stroll comes through and he puts a squeeze on, unnecessarily on Latifi. Now, I think if you rewound that replay, you might see that Latifi maybe has impeded Stroll at some point, because look, how can he? He's so far. Look,
So far
Latifi couldn't be any more out the way if he possibly tried. Stroll's going slowly. He comes right the way across. Now Latifi cannot go to the left. Stroll's there, and then he just blitzes straight over to the right and has the most ludicrous crash.
But that's not even the racing line. Where was Stroll heading for? Because that's not the racing line at that point. He had a perfectly good run on a slow lap to this corner.
He's clearly trying to get out of the way of the Alfa Romeo behind him, but he has to understand at this point he's slowed down so much that he's allowing Latifi through on the right. Where does he expect Latifi to go?
I'm sure he doesn't see him there, but then you've got to have better awareness. I'm sorry. You've got to be aware of cars coming past you. I can only... let's have a look at where his head is then. So he's in the mirrors a little bit now. He's going at reduced pace. And then he does just do a hard turn to the right as Latifi's coming through. Now, I think he's trying to get out the way of cars behind, maybe. And to give him his dues, well, I'm not giving him any dues here, but I think he's trying to get out the way of cars behind, but he doesn't know Latifi's there, and that is why he has the crash.
No, I disagree with you there. He's looking quite clearly in his right-hand mirror. You can see the Canadian flag on the top of his helmet, and he's looking straight in that right-hand wing mirror. He's looking straight at the other Canadian driver coming towards him. If you see that on board
again,
again,
to the right, isn't it? As
his
head's moving to the right.
His head was on the right for quite a long time. You can see the Canadian flag is aligned right, and on that other shot, you can see his head looking straight in the mirror. He must have known Latifi was there.
Well, whether he did or whether he didn't now really doesn't do either of them any favours. Lance Stroll relaxes nonchalantly by the side of the track, but will have big questions to answer about his driving when he gets back into the pits, because I'm sure that these stewards will be looking very, very strongly into that. As things stand, with 2 minutes and 1 second left on the clock, we are under a red flag here in Australia, but it is Verstappen and Perez P1 and P2, Leclerc and Sainz P3 and P4, then Fernando Alonso 5th, Valtteri Bottas 6th, Norris 7th, Hamilton, Russell and Ocon. But in the drop zone, should we get this session back underway to allow a run, Kevin Magnussen and Alex Albon will be hoping to jump out of that drop zone. Nicholas Latifi will not have that chance, neither will Lance Stroll. Sebastian Vettel may just get an opportunity if the amount of added time allows his team to rebuild the car after a big crash this morning in FP3.
So it's tough on Albon and it's tough on K-Mag at the moment, because they are the two in the drop zone that need to get out of this. Latifi is out, his car's in pieces. Stroll is out. Vettel will be out. There's no chance he can make it through into Q2. So it's just whether Albon and Magnussen can get out. They'll need to get out on the green light. They'll need to get out really quickly, because there's going to be a flood of cars that are going to be thinking otherwise, even though they're not in the bottom 5 at the moment. The likes of Schumacher, Joe, Gasly's not safe, Tsunoda's not safe, Ricciardo probably isn't safe. Even though there's only 2 cars that can really depose them, you've got to head straight out. And there's only 2 minutes left on the clock. An outlap is about 2 minutes. So they need to get on with it. If they want to do an outlap, they're going to have to do it pretty quickly and then just go. It's going to be a really tall order now for Albon or Magnussen to get out there, have clear track, get the tyres into the right window, and then deliver a lap good enough that they can jump. They only need 1/10 or a 10th and a half to jump Schumacher, but it's a really tall order in such a short time.
All hands on deck down there at Aston Martin, and you got to feel for everyone down in that garage, so much work that they've had on this weekend. And for this standalone event in Australia, the combination of arriving, the jet lag, the sheer amount of time and effort that they've had to put into rebuilding 2 cars this weekend. Well, they've had to rebuild Seb's car twice. They've now got to rebuild Lance's car twice.
His car wasn't that badly damaged. I mean, it's Williams that have got a huge repair job. Even at low speed, you mentioned it at the top of the show, that turn 5 barrier is really close. It always has been on that inside part. You just don't expect a crash at that point, particularly when you're going slowly. Stroll looks like he's done a front right suspension, presumably not to get the car back to the garage. It'll be more repairs, which Aston Martin will not be in the mood for, particularly when they've barely done any laps and they've had so much repair work to do. But yeah, Williams have got a completely total car, and again it's Latifi's, and I feel sorry for him this time.
Yeah,
he's had a miserable qualifying. He had that moment through the gravel at the start. He's 1.2 seconds down on Alex Albon. He had one more flying lap to try and get himself to respectability, but instead, once again, he's got an absolutely total car.
Just seeing Lance kind of leaning up against the tyres there here in Australia, almost sort of shades of Michael Schumacher 1994 at Adelaide, standing behind those barriers, knowing full well he was responsible for the incident, not wanting to go back and face the questions.
I imagine the emotion is somewhat different.
Yes, as Michael had won a world championship.
2 Canadians.
Indeed.
The 2 Canadians on the grid, Stroll and Latifi. Back markers of 2022 so far.
Strictly speaking, with no times on the board, Lance Stroll and Sebastian Vettel will have to get permission from race control to be able to start the Grand Prix, because as it stands, neither of them have actually qualified for the Grand Prix. I actually had to go back because obviously Vettel struggled to get decent times in one of the sessions. I had to go back and have a look at the times they've set. They will be Pedro Dinitz's getting on the Pedro Diniz rule.
You love this.
Yes.
Man, obviously Vettel's going to be starting the race. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but he still has to, by regulation, still has to be given special permission to do it, because he has not set a representative time in the qualifying practice session. So therefore, he will have to ask to use one of his free practice 1 or free practice 3 or free practice 2 times in order to do it.
Who's Seb? He didn't have a free practice 2 time.
Well, precisely. So he's actually relying pretty much on free practice 1, and actually he will be allowed to start, and obviously he can maybe get out of the garage. There's another Aston Martin driver on a moped. Maybe Aston Martin should start selling mopeds.
Well, I think Sebastian's lap on the moped was probably quicker than his FP1 time. Not
Is
a
that
good
what's going to
weekend.
get him in the 107%?
Possibly.
It's 5,000 euros,
but does that get? I mean, I don't know, Sam. You tell us. If Pedro Diniz rule, does that lap on a moped? Does that work out?
No.
Okay.
Not enough wheels on his wagon. Now, this is interesting because Aston Martin are still absolutely pushing to get that car out on track for Sebastian Vettel. But the session will resume at 16:31.
And they're nowhere near the end of the
And they're nowhere near ready. So
they need to be front of the queue.
And it's got 2 minutes and 1 second. He needs to get across that line before that checkered flag drops. If he doesn't, he will have to go and talk to race control to be able to start the race, which he'll be allowed to.
Yeah, he won't make it. Even for the guys queuing up, they're not going to have the easiest job to get round and put in a sensible lap. I don't think Vettel's going to be able to do that, but he will obviously start the race. I can't see race control not allowing a 4-time champ to start because his car wasn't qualifiable.
No. Lance Stroll though.
Right, look at the queue. Norris at the front of it.
Is there a Haas in there?
Then we have a Williams, and I think it's Alex Albon. Well, it will be Alex Albon, just behind. Then we've got a Haas of Kevin Magnussen. So the 2 drivers that are desperate for a lap are sitting there behind Daniel Ricciardo at the front of the queue.
Yeah, K-Mag and Mick are both in there.
Ricciardo's got half a second back to Schumacher. Should be safe, but you never count your chickens. Vettel's getting strapped in. He's got 1:20 to get out and get enough, get past enough cars that he's going to start the lap. He's not going to do it.
It's going to be tight, but yeah, I fear you're right. He isn't going to get this done. They may just send him out for a sighting lap, an installation lap, because there's a lot of new bits on that car now.
Yep. Pressure now. Pressure. on Albon, on Magnussen, but also on Schumacher. The man in 15th, ahead of his teammate, looking to out-qualify Magnussen for the first time. But always at the end of these qualifying sessions is when you need to be at your best.
Just elbows out, I think, for this one.
Elbows out for this one. That's the outlap. Make sure you keep your position, and he needs to, because it's going to be a bit of a fight to try and get to the front of that queue. 20 seconds to go, and they've got 2 minutes and 1 second until the checkered flag. All they have to do is get around the outlap and start the flying lap.
Well, Vettel's already trying to position himself to go around that AlphaTauri and try to get out of the pits, get through that traffic, because whatever happens, he has got to be able to start a lap at the end of this session to have any hope of getting out of Q1, which looks unlikely, but he could find himself a few grid positions this way at least.
Let's see.
I think this is going to be more like a motor race than a qualifying session.
So
I think you might be right.
Ricciardo, Albon, Magnussen, and then Schumacher, and they are, behind Ricciardo, the three that are under the most pressure at this time, and Sebastian Vettel, who has got to achieve a miracle if he's going to get into Q2.
And they're battling for position there. Look, Albon and the Haas there trying to find track position.
Yeah.
That is what they mean by elbows out, wheel-to-wheel racing.
Lovely, and he's got that done. This is going to be a little mini motor race, 1 minute 26 to get around this lap and get across the line to start a qualifying lap. There will be no hanging about.
It's going to be in recharge mode, so they've got no energy deployment for this lap as well, because they want to save it all up for a flying lap. They've got to have half an eye on the tyre temperature. Just there's no point dragging it around this lap and end up your tyres semi-cooked for the start of a flying lap, or your brakes not in the right window. So there's so much to do now for the drivers. They cannot just push flat out on this one and then think that they're going to be in a position to put in the best qualifying lap that they can possibly do on the next.
And a great job there from the Aston Martin garage. Have to give absolute massive kudos to everyone down there. That's 2 rebuilds done on those cars to even get Sebastian Vettel out. A fantastic job, obviously helped by Lance Stroll creating that ridiculous mess, but yeah, a great job from them. K-Mag's gone. Lots of traffic behind, but Magnussen will get across the line. Then Norris, Ricciardo, my apologies, over the line as well to start their laps. 18 seconds, 17, 16. Who will get cut off? Who will make it through? 14, 13, 12. We're down to 10 seconds. George Russell coming down through turn 11 may just miss the cut. Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, will they pull it into the pits? 3 seconds. They're not going to make it. Hamilton and Russell have both missed the checkered flag. Shocking there from Mercedes, who, has we remember, Lewis Hamilton tells us, do not make mistakes on board with Daniel Ricciardo.
They're fine on pace though, aren't they? They're 8th and 9th and should be safe. Vettel did make it through, so we'll see if he can work some level of magic. Who is improving? That's the big question. And Kevin Magnussen has done a personal best in the first sector, but it's actually still pretty slow. His first sector before was half a second down on Mick Schumacher. In fact, Magnussen is not able to hook up the lap just yet, so Magnussen looks like he might be the first to drop out at this point. Alex Albon's improving. Albon can yet dig himself out, and then it's Albon v Schumacher.
So Gasly with a nice lap. Vettel, let's keep an eye on him as well. Obviously it's going to be green sectors all the way through, but will it be enough for him to make it through into Q2? It would be an unbelievable performance from Sebastian Vettel if he can do it. Our eyes though are focused and attention on Schumacher, Albon, Magnussen, and of course Sebastian Vettel. Can any of them jump up into those Q2 positions?
No one improving. Schumacher not, Albon not, Magnussen not. Gasly does, but he's already safe, so the top 15 are locked in. What about Sebastian Vettel?
It's a P18. Do you know what? It's a great effort either way. A great effort from the team. Hats off to Aston Martin for getting Sebastian Vettel out on track. Hats off to Sebastian Vettel for out qualifying at least one car on what has been a miserable weekend for him and the team. But in terms of this qualifying session, Alex Albon, Kevin Magnussen, Sebastian Vettel, Nicholas Latifi and Lance Stroll will go no further.
Well, that's also actually a P17 start at the very least for Sebastian Vettel, because Alex Albon, he's got that 3-place grid penalty from the last Grand Prix, so he'll drop back significantly. So that'll be 1 place shuffled up for Sebastian Vettel. It wouldn't surprise me to see a few other drivers further up the field perhaps fall back with penalties after this session as well.
For what?
I think there's a few power units that are looking a little bit iffy further up the field. We'll see.
Be early to take a power unit penalty grid drop, wouldn't it? Round 3?
I think some of them are beginning to look a bit marginal. There's only 2 control electronics, for example, that are allowed for the season.
Huge issues if you're already over that allocation now.
Okay, thanks guys for getting the card. Hell of a job there.
Was a good job.
It really was.
From Aston Martin. Vettel made it over the line, by the way, by about half a second before it went check-in. And is that what we're about to see? Or are we about to see something on his flying lap here? This looks like his flying lap, given there's no massive cluster of cars ahead. Just on a little bit of grass, pushing the maximum. It's so difficult for Seb at that point to... oh, we've got a problem for Albon not making it back.
Okay, stop the car, stop the car.
Are you sure?
Stop with the side and switch off.
Well, I mean, a horrible weekend for Aston Martin. Not much better for Williams.
That'll delay the start of Q2, having a stricken Williams there then. Car's in one piece at least, that one.
And thankfully it's relatively close to the marshal post. Should just be able to push it down the road and take it off track. Top times though in that session, Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. It's the first time we've had a Red Bull 1-2 here in Australia this weekend. Then it's a Ferrari 3-4 with Leclerc and Sainz. Fernando Alonso looking very good in P5 for Alpine. Bottas, Norris, the 2 Mercedes, and Pierre Gasly rounding out that top 10.
Might take a little while to recover Alex Albon's stricken Williams. It looks intact, but it might take a little bit longer than normal to get Q2 underway as a result. I think we didn't really see what Ferrari, Red Bull, and also the Alpine, actually both Alpines I guess, could really do. But Esteban Ocon seems to be lagging significantly behind Fernando Alonso. We saw this in free practice 3. I don't think that's down to just the driver. There just seems to be a bit of a gap between those 2 cars.
Alonso has been very confident ever since FP2 really. He was in the wars in FP1, a couple of moments off track, finding the limit, and now he's there consistently on the limit. 5th place for him in Q1 there, but behind the 2 Red Bulls and the 2 Ferraris. Verstappen and Perez both did an extra flying lap than Leclerc though, and went quicker on that final flying lap. Max had 3/10 to the Ferraris, which is a good effort, particularly in the final sector there, hooking it up. But I think there's more to come from Leclerc, certainly. Sainz actually did the same amount of laps as the 2 Red Bulls, so that's like for like. Red Bull, it's the first time this weekend that Verstappen has looked hooked up around the whole lap. He's had many sectors that look quick, but actually delivering it around the whole lap without having a big lurid oversteer or washing wide with understeer at some point, or even just traffic at various times in FP2, wasn't it? And for the first time he's hooked it up, and he's back to the old Max Verstappen really, quarter of a second up on Perez. But has Leclerc got something more to offer?
Mick Schumacher through to Q2, which will be delayed. We have the confirmation of that. So take a little look down there at Fernando Alonso. What do we think about Fernando?
In a very general sense, or in this qualifying, or my overall thoughts on Fernando?
Take it however you want there. We've got a delay. You've got time.
He is a fierce competitor, Will. And where is he, 40?
He is.
Age 40, he is still as hungry as I think Fernando Alonso has ever been. He's at age 40 in what is typically a midfield Alpine, and the guy just doesn't know how to relax. He's got no chill at all. He could be fighting towards the back end of the field, as we all know, and I certainly know, and he will still put his neck on the line for a place outside of the points. When he smells a podium, which he did last year, or maybe a front couple of row starts, certainly top 6 looks like it's on the cards for him, he will do everything to get it. He is just ferociously competitive.
Session will start at 16:44, so in just about 4 minutes' time.
Now, This session will be an interesting one. If Valtteri Bottas makes it through to Q3, he will continue that incredible run of over 100 races through to Q3. Valtteri Bottas hasn't failed to make it to Q3 well, since the start of the 2017 F1 season. This would be his 104th visit in a row to Q3, and right now Bottas sitting in P6, looking pretty great, and actually looking pretty thankful that he moved away from Mercedes, because he's got way more pace.
That's what I was about to say, yeah. He's 2 tenths quicker, they're a tenth and a half up on Hamilton, who was 4 thousandths ahead of Russell, and Bottas just nudging both the Mercedes, shuffling them down.
While we wait then for this qualifying session to get back underway, let's hear from Nicholas Latifi, involved in that incident with Lance Stroll that brought the red flag out in Q1.
Thanks, Nicky. Just sorry about that. Didn't look like it was your fault out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it felt like from behind the wheel, and then just before coming here to the media pen, I've just seen the video as well, and kind of even confirms that, what my feeling was. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's quite clear. I mean, I let him by because I was told he was on a push lap. He obviously must have backed off a corner or two before. And then, yeah, I just kind of wanted to get back by him to carry on with my cool-down lap and get my tire preparation correct. It was a gap. Big gap at the time. I went for it, and then for whatever reason, once I got alongside him, he decided to turn in. So, yeah, not much more to say besides that.
Kind of thing you'll go and chat about with him later on?
I mean, I'm sure we're both going to get called to the stewards, but I mean, there's not really anything to say. I mean, seen the video, it's clearly his fault. He probably wasn't looking in the mirrors. On the cool-down lap, or both on cool-down laps, fine, but I mean, it's still not my fault, and he clearly turned into me. So, yeah, I don't think there's going to really be anything that needs to be said, to be honest.
And just a big job for the guys at the team to get the car ready for tomorrow.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. It's a lot of damage. I mean, it was such a small impact in terms of the actual crash itself, but it just has such big consequences because of how the crash was, doing quite a few corners, and yeah, it's a shame. Obviously coming off of a few crashes as well, so it's the last thing I would have wanted, but you know, it's just bad luck.
All right, well, I'm glad you're okay. Good luck tomorrow.
And our thanks to Lawrence Barretto down there in the media pen, asking the questions of Nicholas Latifi. Right, 1 minute 40 seconds left to go. Jolyon, Sam, who have you got for this? Do you think anybody out of the Ocon, Ricciardo, Tsunoda, Joe, Schumacher might be able to leap up into Q3?
Daniel Ricciardo's got a quick McLaren, home race for him. I don't know if that adds pressure or bad luck or what for Daniel Ricciardo, but it hasn't actually worked out all that well for him in the past. But
it's a bit of a hoodoo here for him, isn't it?
Yeah, but there's so much Aussie support. It would be great to see Daniel get into Q3 at least. Lando Norris is flying in the other McLaren so far today. Daniel there just nearly 4 tenths adrift of his teammate, but the car clearly has a bit of pace. You can say the same for Esteban Ocon, who's a chunk away from Fernando Alonso. Again, 4 tenths. Both of them have good midfield cars, and then if they both jump up, then you're looking at, I don't know, a Mercedes maybe not making it through into Q3 again.
Well, George Russell hasn't been in the top 10 in any session this weekend.
Well, that's what I was about to say. Pierre Gasly, I think we haven't really seen what that AlphaTauri can really do. I think he can move up. It's got some good straight line speed, that car, so he could improve significantly, and that could see both Mercedes getting bumped out. So I think it's the Mercedes are the cars at risk of being knocked out for Q3.
Well, we will find out soon enough. Less than 30 seconds on the clock until we start Q2, but it doesn't appear to be a massive rush of cars to make it out.
Gasly was actually the only driver to improve right at the end of Q1 there, other than Sebastian Vettel, who didn't have a time on the board. And that says when you're rushing on an outlap with traffic in various places and you can still find a bit of time, it does say that he's missed performance earlier on in the session, and he ended up in the top 10, so decent effort. It's anyone's game, this.
That's what we like to hear. Verstappen first man out, followed by the 2 Mercedes, the Haas of Mick Schumacher, the sister Red Bull of Sergio Perez. It's going to be a fascinating one. Just 15 minutes in this session, and Max Verstappen, our first man out on track. Of course, as with Q1, not necessarily about who's the quickest. You just don't want to be in the bottom 5 come the checkered flag at the end of the session. All to play for. here, of course, the old rule in which you had to run the tyres that took you through to Q3 at the start of the race has been revoked. You now get a free choice of tyre no matter where you qualify or how you go about it. So the teams and drivers free to do as they please and just gun for the fastest lap no matter the tyre.
Soft tyre o'clock today.
Oh yeah.
It's the only tyre we've seen in the whole of qualifying so far. No one messing around on a medium. The performance just isn't there compared to the soft. And everyone pretty much heading straight out. Zhou is left in the pits, but he should be heading out any time now as well. And that's all because, once again, they want to get at least a couple of flying laps on this set of tyres.
Just had confirmation from the Alfa Romeo garage that they've actually fitted a new gearbox, new transmission to Valtteri Bottas's car. That's the second from his pool of 4 for the entire season, so that's quite early. But this is the first time in a very long time that Sauber Engineering, who built the Alfa Romeo, have designed and built their own transmission system, so they have been having some reliability issues with it. So I do wonder if that is more penalties spelt ahead for Valtteri Bottas. Let's not forget, he already has some almost certainly coming his way later in the season for a power unit part.
Riding on board then with Max Verstappen. Unhappy with the car throughout the weekend, struggling particularly through Sector 3, which had proven to be such a strong part of the racetrack for Ferrari. It's a little bit Happy Gilmore, I thought, during Q1. You know, when Happy Gilmore can't putt. And then he tap it, and then he learns how to putt, and there's just the little moment of Max kind of going, uh-oh. Max learned how to drive Sector 3. Like, you know, just totally gets on it quicker than the Ferraris through Sector 3. Sam's looking at us with glazed eyes. Has clearly never seen Happy Gilmore. We need to rectify that, my friend, this afternoon as Verstappen comes through to the end of the lap. Purple middle sector. Let's see, has he got to grips once again with that third sector across the line for Max Verstappen down the straight. It's going to be a 1 minute 18.611. Hello.
I think we might have had a Mercedes in the wars. Maybe George Russell in Sector 3 caused the yellow flag briefly. Russell had actually done the faster first sector than Verstappen. Then it got overtaken by Leclerc, then Sainz, and now Fernando Alonso has the fastest first sector as well. Perez comes through, 3/10 down on his teammate. It was maybe Hamilton.
Yeah.
Oh no, it was Russell that went off track at turn 11. Hamilton maybe stuck behind his teammate. They went out line astern, didn't they? And Hamilton not able to put in a lap as a result.
Well, Hamilton at 1:29, Russell at 1:38. Mick Schumacher clearly caught out behind them both as well with a 1 minute 40. But I tell you what, we've been talking about him. The man at 50-1, little loose rear around turn 11 into 12 now for Fernando Alonso on an absolutely belting lap, Jolyon.
Fastest man through the first and second sectors. Hamilton's just beaten him in the first sector, but it's the third sector where the most performance is found. It's the twistier section, and you can win or lose a lot there, and he's lost a little bit, Fernando, compared to Max Verstappen, but it's still a good lap to go 2/10 off in second place.
Looks like he got a bit of wheel spin, a little bit sideways, coming out of 13 and into 14, just losing a little bit there, but we're riding on board with Lewis Hamilton, quickest of all through Sector 1. He's a decent chunk off through Sector 2 though, and it's what we saw during FP3. And then Sector 3, the Mercedes was miles away. Let's see what he's got though. P11 at the moment for Lewis Hamilton. Can he improve, and where will it place him? He does improve, but only to P8.
Yeah, not great for Hamilton. His middle sector was a full 4/10 shy of Fernando Alonso's, and on an 18-second sector, that's a lot. So I don't know if Lewis has made a mistake there or just not hooked it up, or the Mercedes is missing something, straight line speed, possibly, but very poor in the middle sector for Lewis. Still up into the top 10 for now. This is what happened to George Russell then. Oh, he caught the grass on the way in. That's why he didn't actually go through the gravel, because he just got a little bit sloppy on the approach to 11, dropped the left front onto the grass, and you ain't turning in from there, so he just aborted.
Interesting message from Race Control that Sergio Perez is under investigation for not slowing down for yellow flags.
And that would be those yellow flags down there, of course, for George Russell. That was why Lewis Hamilton's lap was so far off. It was why Mick Schumacher's was so far off. Don't forget double waved yellows, as I imagine it would be a double waved yellow for that. Slow down. be prepared to stop. The stewards showing throughout this weekend they will be ruthless with the application of the rules in the sport. Sebastian Vettel with a €5,000 fine for taking that moped onto the track without permission, clamping down also on such things as the wearing of jewellery and non-fire retardant underpants. Believe it or not, that's a genuine headline as Verstappen comes through the final sector. Not a great middle sector for him. Perez, though, fastest of all through sector 1. Rapid again through sector 2. Verstappen's backed off, closed the DRS.
He got scrappy through the penultimate corner, got wide and had a really tight line for the final sweep. Unlike Sergio Perez, who sweeps through there very nicely indeed. He drives to the line. Can he go to the top? He can.
Oh, wallop.
Quarter of a second over Max. Max was going well, but he was down on Perez in both the first 2 sectors anyway, and then got in a bit hot at turn 13 and couldn't get through the final corner properly. Advantage Perez.
Well, possibly advantage Perez, unless the stewards have something to say about it for not heeding those yellow flags as he's passed by George Russell, who's just jumped up into a pretty tidy P6, but that is almost 3/4 of a second off the pace that Perez has shown.
Leclerc a long way adrift.
Sainz even further.
Yeah, 7/10 for Leclerc. Sainz not hooking anything up, nearly a second away.
In an unusual situation for Red Bull, Sergio Perez has the new front wing on the car, not Max Verstappen. He's got those new front wing end plates and seems to be making it work for him over his Dutch teammate. Normally, Max Verstappen gets all the new bits.
Traffic with the Red Bull.
Copy, complete the lap.
I had a problem with the Red Bull was in the way.
Not from what we saw there. He got out of the way. It's Verstappen. It got a little bit tight, but
Was he on the lap? Hamilton was on the lap, yeah.
oh,
That's rather incriminating radio there.
oh yeah. So Max obviously does think he held Lewis up. I think Lewis was still pinned as he went past him, but maybe just slightly distracted, or maybe he's not happy about the corner before, because Max was getting out of the way there and left the racing line.
It was interesting, wasn't it? Because Max definitely pulled off the racing line to the right, but you could see he was just starting to veer back to the left, then sees Hamilton coming through and kind of jinks out of the way. And I think that initial kind of shock is the excuse for that radio message there. But yeah, clearly if GP hadn't told him that Lewis was on a lap and coming through, could be something the stewards will be looking at.
I think for a moment I thought we might be having a Stroll Latifi sort of moment as we went on board with Hamilton with a slow car ahead of that section of track
At much higher speed.
at full speed, but actually there was space for Lewis to go through and keep it flat out and had the line into 6. So I don't know how much impeding was actually there, but Lewis radioed it. Max seemed to be fairly concerned by it as well, so I'm sure Mercedes, as we all know from the last year, will be radioing up to race control and saying, have a look at that please.
Let's take a look at Carlos Sainz then, P8 right now, and I'm going to say as it stands, by no means safe on a 19.2. The drivers outside the top 10, Ocon on a 19.3. Bottas on a 19.4. Bottas, as we were saying, gunning to make it for a 104th time in a row through to Q3, has shown so far this weekend he does have the pace. Carlos is off. He's backed out.
He's got time though, still 5.5 minutes, 5 minutes 40 left on the clock, so he's got plenty of time to get a better lap in. I wonder, was that used tyres for Sainz and Leclerc so far in this session? They saved a set of tyres here. Has Bottas? They're all slightly slower than we have seen them earlier on, or were they just caught out with the yellow flag for Russell and didn't manage to hook up the lap there and then came back into the pits?
Sainz is on new tyres at the moment. That's the last time he was out. He was on new tyres, brand new.
What about the last run though? That's where he's set his 8th quickest time. I think that might explain the drop off in pace for Ferrari at this point. With 5 minutes to go, Sainz does need to put a decent lap in. We saw last time in Q1, you can get caught out and it can be not your fault in the slightest. 2 other people having an incident, or just one person having an incident, bringing out a yellow flag or a red flag, and it means you can't improve. And he's only got 1/10 back to Esteban Ocon, a couple of tenths back to Valtteri Bottas. Those guys are in fast midfield cars who can find more pace on this last run as well.
You're absolutely spot on. That 1:19.2 set by Carlos Sainz was indeed on used tyres.
So Here goes Carlos Sainz, having wound it up for the big push here at the end of Q2. 4 minutes and 20 seconds left on the clock as he threads his way through Sector 1. The sun starting to go down at Albert Park. You can see it is the golden hour at the track. That beautiful blast of sunlight through the trees.
Makes it tough to see when you're driving where the sun goes down. I remember my debut driving here and couldn't see into half the corners. I had the two Toro Rossos at the time, one of which was Max Verstappen swarming behind me. I had no idea where he was. It just becomes that little bit tricky. It looks spectacular, but they are driving into the sun now. It's difficult at this point to see to pick a braking point for turn 11.
What are you wearing at that point? Polarized visor, full smoke? What do you
Some
choose?
level of full tint.
Full tint.
A very tinted visor, but it still doesn't completely block out the sun. If it does, then you're still not absolutely blinded by it, but all it does is sort of dim it.
Well, Carlos Sainz may have been blinded by the severe porpoising of the car. We could see it on that run down through turns 9 and 10. Looks absolutely horrible, but he's good enough to go P3, quicker than Leclerc, quicker, easy for me to say, than Alonso. Not quite on the pace of those Red Bulls who have turned things up coming into qualifying.
Now, you remember how Sebastian Vettel got to the line with just half a second to spare? Yep. Well, he's just been busted for pit lane speeding on the way out, and it's cost him another €600. Now, he just went slightly over the pit lane speed limit, and that probably allowed him to get across that line.
Charles Leclerc, meanwhile, has found pace on the track. Fastest of all in Sector 1. Across the line goes P2 and splits the Red Bulls. Gentlemen, we have got a fight on our hands. It's Perez in P1, Leclerc P2, Verstappen P3, and Sainz P4 with 2.5 minutes left to run. Of course, that are the times at the top, and we don't really need to worry about them too much. It is the times at the bottom that we're most concerned about, but we've got a great fight on our hands for pole here.
Yeah, Leclerc getting closer, but it's still Perez out front. Perez, who has an investigation after the session now for failing to slow for yellow flags. That'll be a sloppy error if he gets done for it in Q2, run 1, lap 1. But there's pressure elsewhere. Lewis Hamilton is down in 9th. Here he goes into a flying lap. Pierre Gasly is also looking to wind up for a lap next time around. All of these guys now launching into their final flying lap to try and get through. Although Lewis isn't pushing here, so he's going to go for the next one and leave it all down to the final lap. He is currently safe, but if others improve further back, he's not far from being knocked out here. He's only 1/10 quicker than the drop zone.
And the first driver to start their flyer should be Valtteri Bottas, who is coming through to complete his warm-up lap with 1 minute and 24 seconds left on the clock.
Well, the two Alpines are saying bonjour shortly, but maybe hola as they start their laps. Esteban Ocon will be the fastest of those. He's taken new tyres, while Fernando Alonso is taking used tyres.
Alonso thinks he's safe, I think. He's done a good job so far up in 5th, not wanting to use another new set because he thinks he's going to be in Q3. Ocon has work to do down in 11th. Daniel Ricciardo's done a good job so far. He said after Q1 that he was someone that could jump up into the top 10, give the home fans something to cheer about. He's currently 8th and done a decent job, as is George Russell up in 7th. But these are the crucial final laps now. Everyone can find a bit of time. The track's improving. It's just cooling slightly as well. And Ocon is up on Pierre Gasly through the first sector, even if it's not even a personal best for him.
Looks for all the world as though Esteban Ocon has had a far better first sector than Valtteri Bottas. Will Bottas's Q3 run come to an end? This is the only lap that he will get. Ocon remains up on Gasly's time, almost by 0.3 of a second. It's not a fantastic lap from Valtteri Bottas. I think his incredible run may be about to come to an end.
He's improving through the final sector though. He's done a personal best in the middle. His first sector's nothing magic. Gasly's completely off it, so there's an open target there of 10th place. And Bottas, can he improve? He only needs a couple of tenths. What about Ocon?
Bottas will come to the line. I'll call him through as he comes, and I don't think he's done it. He hasn't. Bottas's run ends. Ocon jumps to 8th. A wonderful lap then from Esteban Ocon. And who's it bumped? Lewis Hamilton. P10, we ride on board with Pierre Gasly now. P11, will he be bumped? Or can he improve through the final sector over the line for Gasly? And it is not enough. We look now then to Daniel Ricciardo, currently sitting P9. Best middle sector that he's done so far today through the final corner for him. Wants to move up as Sainz improves to P2. Ricciardo improves to P8. So it's Ricciardo P8, Ocon P9, Lewis Hamilton down in P10 now, as we look to Yuki Tsunoda trying to get into the top 10 as well. Currently sitting down there in P15. Can the Japanese driver do it? No. P13 for Tsunoda as Hamilton jumps up to P10 and Gasly drops to P11, and now it's P8 for Lewis Hamilton. My apologies for that. P8, not a P10 for Lewis Hamilton. Gasly P11, Bottas P12, Tsunoda 13th, Joe 14th, Mick Schumacher 15th, and they are the drivers who will go no further.
Disappointment for Bottas mainly, I think. He's dropped 10th and a half compared to what he did in Q1. Not able to find the pace in Q2. And the Alfa Romeo, that has been looking decent throughout practice and Q1, is out in 12th position. And they've got issues with starts as well.
They have.
So starting 12th and 14th, they've got a lot of work to do now for tomorrow. And Valtteri just getting slower from Q1 to Q2 is not the direction you need to be heading. And if you're heading that way, you're pretty much heading out.
It's been a disappointing weekend across the board for AlphaTauri as well. Never really looking like they were in proper top 10 contention.
On the cusp, weren't they? Gasly's within a 10th of Esteban Ocon. He had a miserable final lap, and Yuki Tsunoda, that was his first attempt on his final run. He managed to have that last lap to get up to 13th, but Yuki getting it wrong at turn 11, turning in and having a big load of oversteer. That wall pitches in quite a lot as well, but Yuki just avoiding it. What's Lewis Hamilton done through turn 10? That's all okay. Yeah, all okay. Just a little bit sparky on the curves there on the exit. Still behind George Russell though. Lewis, 300ths away.
Yeah.
The two Mercedes not split by much, but they are behind an Alpine and a McLaren.
Not entirely sure what that Leclerc radio is. Our apologies for that.
He's a man of few words.
Let's take it. Perez P1 then at the end of the session. Carlos Sainz jumping up to P2 right at the end of 118.4. Leclerc P3, Verstappen 4th. Perez is really pulling it out in quality of these last couple of weekends, isn't he?
He's flying. There's a lot of traffic there for Russell on his lap. And that's when the sun is going down as well. You can just see it on the camera lens. It's the same for the drivers. It's harder to see. And Russell just came through that corner and had cars everywhere. They all tried to get out of the way. Whoever it was on the exit of turn 12 was the closest to not getting out of the way. But Russell's through anyway.
The big story then out of Q2 here in Melbourne, Australia, is that Valtteri Bottas, for the first time since Abu Dhabi 2016, will not feature in Q3.
I really like that stat as well. To have a run that's that long of Q3 appearances.
It's huge.
What, 5 years?
Absolutely massive, mate. Yeah, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, every single race in the first 2 races of 2022.
That saddens me a little bit, that.
Yeah, me too.
All good things come to an end.
Well,
Valtteri just didn't hook it up.
But especially in that Alfa Romeo, which part of it is a great car, part of it, you know, is that car a worthy top 10 contender, or is it just Valtteri getting something special out of it and showing just what a great driver he is and what a lap he can pull?
I think the car is a worthy top 10 contender. Alfa Romeo didn't have the best results in the last couple of seasons in the Constructors' Championship. Williams nicked a whole bunch off them late last year. That's given Alfa Romeo quite a large wind tunnel allowance, so that car is quite advanced, it's quite developed. It's not quite as far as the Haas, but I do think that is a solid piece of engineering there from the Sauber team in Switzerland. And yes, I know it is an Alfa Romeo, but it's designed and built by Sauber.
Haas and McLaren have pretty much switched, haven't they, this weekend from the early running. McLaren now with both cars into Q3, back to much better form. Norris 6th, Ricciardo through as well in 9th, this time just 700 separating them. In fact, the times were so close in the bottom end of the top 10 in that session. But Haas, 15th and 17th, really torrid for them.
Please have other helmet ready. Other visor. Sun's in my eyes here.
There you
Roger.
go.
How many helmets and how many visors would a driver have prepped for this?
Mate, I can't see with the sun. It's unbelievable. I'm completely blinded.
It's so difficult to see when the sun starts going down into certain corners. Turn 1, turn 3 are the biggest culprits. Particularly, this is the same that they're going to have in the race tomorrow. And I remember just making my debut and having that man behind me hunting me down for a points position at the time. And I know he's in the DRS zone, I know he's somewhere, but do I have to defend, do I not? It's so tricky to see, because looking to the apex of the corner is tough, let alone squinting in your mirrors to see a flash of Toro Rosso at the time. But it can be it can be anything. And both championship rivals then from last year needing a visor change. I had 4 helmets at any race, and they would be set up with 4 different visor configurations, so it can be a really quick change. They'll have them in the back of the garage, and Lewis, now he's back in the pits, will just do a helmet change, I'd have thought, rather than a visor change. Just stick on the new one, new visor ready, tear-offs ready, and away you go.
And how often are you talking to your helmet guys through the weekend about the variances of different shading that you can have, or polarization, or reflection?
You're doing it early on. By the way, Perez is in trouble there. There was definitely a waved yellow into turn 11, and he's just seen the replay and he's thinking, uh-oh, fiddlesticks. He's the fastest man this weekend, and he's gone through a waved yellow and he's improved. They'll try and find the data to show that actually he braked a little bit early, actually the minimum speed was down.
It's a slam dunk, isn't it?
Fundamentally, he did a decent lap, he went into the top 3 at the time. It's a slam dunk, and that is really, really silly for Checo, because he's on such great form. Pole last time out, fastest man again coming into Q3.
Yep.
He's guaranteed himself at least a 3-place grid drop in my eyes.
We'll wait to see.
Nothing.
Yeah.
For the first lap of Q2, he's in a Red Bull. Just back off, but you will get a lap in. All you need to do is get in the top 10. That's the frustration.
Visor down. Time to go for Max Verstappen. We are moments away from Q3 here at Albert Park, Melbourne, Australia. Round 3 of the 2022 Formula 1 World Championship. Thus far this weekend, it has been all about the battle that it has been all about since the beginning of the year in Bahrain through Saudi Arabia. Ferrari versus Red Bull, Leclerc and Sainz versus Verstappen and Perez. But as Jolyon has just pointed out, has Sergio Perez already put himself on the back foot? He appears to be one of, if not the fastest drivers out there on track at the moment on this day. But with that moment accelerating through that yellow flag, might he have already undone any potential pole position he could take this afternoon?
Whatever the case for Perez, it's still important that he guns it for pole position, or at least fastest qualifier here, because if it is a 3-place grid drop, better to start 4th than end up 3rd here and end up 6th behind the Mercedes, and he'll lose touch at the start and be out of the race. So he has to still maximise what he can do, but I think Red Bull will have half an eye on the stewards room already. The good news is it doesn't look like there's any investigation for Max Verstappen and that Hamilton moment, so it didn't look like there was all that much in it. No. But when you hear radio from both sides, you wonder if there's something more, but the stewards, as yet, not interested.
Here we go then for the first runs in Q3. Sam, Jolyon, who's your money on?
I think we could see a little bit of a surprise from the Alpines. Fernando Alonso hanging back in the garage. Don't think they'll get pole position, much to Will's disappointment, but I do think he will get up there very close. But for me, it's going to be a Ferrari on pole.
Which one though? Come on.
Charles Leclerc.
Oh, Charles Leclerc. Okay, Jolyon.
Verstappen has been underwhelming in qualifying so far this year, but I think it's Max for pole this time. You?
Carlos, let's go. So here we go. Verstappen in sector 1. He's just been finding the time, pulling it throughout the weekend, building up to where he needs to be now in this Q3. Clear track ahead of him. Into the new turn 6.
It's a cracking first sector from Verstappen.
It's huge.
It's a really good first sector. That's tenths quicker than we've seen anyone through there all weekend. Max is lighting it up at the moment, and you can see Sergio Perez behind, the fastest man at Q2, is over 2 tenths adrift. It's a good middle sector for Max as well. This is a lap here from him.
This is absolutely wondrous. Verstappen, as I said, with that clear track ahead of him, just a few corners to go, a slow-moving McLaren, which we will hope will get out of the way. Either that or start the lap before Verstappen comes through. And it's looking so together for Verstappen, even in this third sector. No, it's not. A lock-up into turn 13. And he's been struggling in that corner all through the weekend.
He's mighty through the first 2 sectors. It might be enough for him. Crosses the line. Oh, 18.4. He's lost a lot of time in that final corner. The lock-up ran wide. Not able to turn the car. Does it open the door for Perez?
Let's see. It's an 18.398. It is enough for Sergio Perez. That mistake then from Verstappen into turn 13. But he was mighty in sectors 1 and 2.
1,000th of a second faster than his team.
As he had lunch before the session. The difference of weight, 1,000, nothing between them.
That's a wafer thin mint. That's all that is.
That's right, Monsieur Creosote Buxton.
There's loads more to come though from Max. That mistake at the penultimate corner cost him a decent chunk of lap time. He was a long way up on Checo until that moment. Decent up from Ricciardo, just 6 tenths away from the Red Bulls. The Ferraris have both done prep laps, so they're just finishing their prep laps. That's not a mistake from Leclerc to be 24 seconds off. They're just cruising, trying to bring the tyres in, and now they're going to gun it.
As we ride on board with Lewis Hamilton, of course knocked out in Q1 a couple of weeks ago in Saudi Arabia. No such problems this weekend. If he could get pole by some miracle, it would be a record. It would be a 9th pole at one circuit. No driver has achieved that in Formula 1 history. But it will have to take something absolutely mighty from Lewis Hamilton to beat the challenge posed at the moment by Red Bull and Ferrari. The Mercedes just does not appear to have the pace to compete. Lewis and George saying all the way through the weekend, even when they pull out a lap that feels good, the pace just isn't in the car. 1 corner left from Lewis, a couple of bites at that last corner. Down the straight and over the line. It doesn't look spectacular. It's a P6, almost a second off.
No, that's not spectacular. Slowest of the 6 runners so far. The Ferraris are going for it. Fernando Alonso's going for it as well. Fastest middle sector for him. The 3 of them are all neck and neck. Leclerc squirming out of the penultimate corner, desperate for a bit of traction.
Oh, and Alonso's in the wall. He'd looked so fast all the way through this weekend, but Fernando Alonso has put it in the barrier. Red flag just before Leclerc crosses the line.
Leclerc got through. That's Sainz. Leclerc
that is
put in
Sainz.
the lap.
My apologies.
Sainz did not put in the lap.
So Leclerc crossed the line. Sainz did not. And Alonso is okay. And that's good to see. And that's down there at turn 12, 11, 12.
He's up on Leclerc through 2 sectors. Actually, Fernando. He's quicker than Charles Leclerc, who's provisional pole through the first 2 sectors. Leclerc's done a very quick final sector, which is where he's clawed back some time to go a 10th and a half up on Perez. Oh, it's a car issue. He's lost the engine.
Man.
I lost the hydraulics and I could not change gear.
It sounded to me like he lost more than the hydraulics, actually. I think you're right. It sounded like the engine just shut off completely. It went completely silent before he got to the corner. I'd like to see that replay again, actually.
But as he stalled it, as he's just jumped on the brakes and not been able to go down the gears, or no,
it wouldn't.
It must be no, it wouldn't. It must be the way that the engine just cut off there. A little bit like Perez in Bahrain on the final lap, just goes silent. You can't control the car anymore.
And this is what we've been talking about all weekend, guys. The pace. Not just out of the Alpine, but particularly out of Fernando Alonso around this circuit this weekend. We asked the question, what could stop them? What could hold them back? The only thing, the reliability of that car. So rapid, but so fragile.
I tell you what, it's happening to Alonso a lot at the moment, isn't it? He had a slight issue at the end of the Bahrain race with the power unit. Out from a brilliant Grand Prix in Jeddah last time out. Was looking like he was going to finish 5th, 6th. Right up there with George Russell, probably in 6th, but it was a cracking drive, and then had a problem with the water pump, and now another reliability issue when he could have been on provisional pole. I nearly scoffed at you, Sam, when you said Alpine would be right up there, but his lap was absolutely cracking to that point.
I heard more scoff than a dining room, actually, when I said that from you. But
no, what?
More scoff than a dining room?
What's a scoff?
Food.
But
yeah, I think that pace is real. We have been talking about this over the weekend, but I think Esteban Ocon is the mystery to me. Why is he not replicating that performance of Fernando Alonso?
Yeah.
We saw so clearly in Jeddah that there isn't much between those two drivers in identical cars, but he just hasn't shown the pace all the way through this weekend.
And that lap from Alonso.
A red flag, I'm box.
Just as I was crossing the line.
Yeah, exactly. Lap time not there.
Sainz was right there with Leclerc on pace as well. Leclerc's lap is not unbeatable for anyone. He was slower than Sainz by a tenth and a half in the middle sector. He was 1/10 quicker than Sainz through the first. So, like Alonso, Sainz was actually up on his teammate into that final sector. Don't know how he was doing through it because he didn't cross the line to actually chalk a time up, but frustration for him then, just missing out by seconds, and that lap then counts for nothing. It's wiped from the archives.
I'm absolutely gutted for us as viewers, for Fernando and Alpine as well, that's happened, because we should have had a five-way fight for pole here today. That was a brilliant lap, mesmerising. Fernando Alonso at the moment holds the fastest middle sector that we've seen so far today, a 17.7. It was wonderful. It was absolutely beautiful.
And if he had actually been able to finish the lap, he might have got himself up into the top, well, 4 certainly, because there's a big gap from Verstappen to Ricciardo. And then even if they had to repair the car and take a 5-place gearbox penalty or whatever, he's still in the top 10. But as it is, it's a tough way back now, and he's been so quick this weekend.
Now, this qualifying session should have finished about a quarter of an hour ago. The reason that it hasn't is the delay, primarily, to Q1. We've already heard from Nicholas Latifi. Let's hear from the other driver involved in that incident, which brought out the red flags, Lance Stroll.
Hey Lance, great job by the team to get the car out, and then I guess just frustrating with the way it all ended. Just talk me through it.
Yeah, big thanks to the guys. I mean, they worked really hard, and it's a shame we had a terrible day, but yeah, it was a very awkward situation what happened on a cool down lap, and Nicholas let me go, and then the track falls to the right there, and as he accelerated, it felt, like I said, it falls to the right and gets very narrow, and the timing was just really bad, I guess, and yeah, that's what caused the collision.
Were you expecting him to go that way round you?
He went all of a sudden, very suddenly, and like I said, it falls to the right, so the car kind of dips to the inside as the track falls away there, and I think the timing was just terrible. As he was accelerating, the track was falling to the right for me, and that's where we made contact.
Lance, then, actually, let's have a little watch on this Fernando replay again.
He loses the engine very early. Just as he's hitting the brakes, it goes, and then he can't slow down, can't stop the car, no engine braking at all, and there's nothing he can do.
So I found that Lance interview quite interesting, as he was quite vociferous on the radio as to whose fault it was. By the time he's got back to the pits, maybe watched the replay a couple of times, not apportioning blame at all.
Well, look, he'll know that he's made a real error of judgment there. He'll know it. To say that it's the track going to the right or whatever is we can all see what's happened. He's driven to the right more than the track's gone to the right. The gap was there for Latifi. Suddenly, actually, Latifi was just minding his own business, going past a slower car, and Stroll drove into him. Lance will know it. He's not great at checking the mirrors. There's been many occasions where he has an incident. In fact, I was surprised that he turned it on Alex Albon last time out in Jeddah. Albon got the penalty for it, but for me, Stroll had to give him space.
Shades of 2018 first lap, Brendan Hartley, Canada. Okay, much faster speeds, but that same kind of moving without really having any awareness of the cars around you.
Yeah, and remember, he touched with Seb, his own teammate, in Sochi last year. He put Seb in the wall because he didn't have awareness of drivers around him in the mirrors. He's got to be able to see behind him, and assuming that he can, this is an absolute basic of trying to go wheel-to-wheel racing, then he's got to be more aware of just looking around him. And when you're backing off and you're not on a flying lap anymore, just make sure you know, because there's going to be cars overtaking you in qualifying, particularly Q1. There's 19 other cars there. You've got to make sure you know who's about, particularly on, it's a narrow section of track. There's easily enough space for 2 cars.
So we are still under red flag here in Q3. We've had a red flag in every session. 5 minutes.
Until the session
Until
restarts.
the session restarts. Sorry, you know I love a pregnant pause. We will restart this session with only 9 drivers. Fernando Alonso in the barriers. Nothing that he could do about that. The car shutting down on him as he was about to complete what was, frankly, a phenomenal lap. Sergio Perez has looked quick all through this weekend, has looked quick, particularly today, particularly once we've got to qualifying, but potentially has a case to answer for running through yellow flags at full speed. Wherever he finishes, will he ultimately have a grid penalty in his pocket? Leclerc is currently the fastest man on a 1:18.239, but Max Verstappen, with a scintillating, mesmerising first 2 sectors, just got it a little bit wrong in turn 13. If he can hook that, keep sector 3 up, Verstappen will be right there with Leclerc.
If you look at the difference, though, between the 2 Red Bulls, or largely the complete lack of difference, they essentially have set the same lap time. Has Max Verstappen pushed the car to as fast as it physically can go through that final sequence, or can he string it together in that final bit? I think he might be on the absolute limit.
No, because he had a massive lock-up.
There's loads more in there for Verstappen. He's the fastest man through the first sector. He was, 3 tenths quicker than Perez. He was quicker than Perez by a couple of tenths in the middle, and he made a big lock-up in the penultimate corner, ran wide and lost a heap of time. Pole position is there for Max. It was only earlier on in this qualifying session we said that he'd finally nailed that sector 3. Well, he got it wrong again this time. He's erratic in sector 3, but when he hooks it up, he's quick. He can be the quickest man through there, but he just made a big mistake on that flying lap. Still salvaged the time that is 1,000th from Perez. So on paper, if that finishes like this 10 years later, we'll be saying, the Red Bull was that pace and they were nothing to separate them. They must have been on the limit. No. But actually, Max has got probably half a second in there at the moment.
See, Sam, it's not all just about the numbers and the stats. There's stories behind it. Can't just rely on the numbers.
Yeah, look at that. 3.5 tenths to Checo in the final sector. He was a good chunk ahead through the first 2. So it was 3.5 tenths he lost to his teammate there.
Talking about the story, though, talking about the storytelling of this year, Ferrari versus Red Bull, it's still too close to call. It's still too tight to call. With 7 minutes left in this session, our guesses for pole are still as meritorious as they were, and we still don't have any idea where we're going to be.
Hey, Fernando Alonso is not looking the smart money anymore.
Well,
it's a shame because he was very quick. But I'm still sticking Verstappen. 2.5 minutes till we get going. Then we've got 6 minutes or 7 minutes pretty much left on the clock.
We've not seen everything from Carlos yet. Didn't complete his lap.
That's sort of the story of this season, though. It feels like we've not seen everything from Carlos, and well, that's him. Yeah, Charles seems to be the faster Ferrari, and I don't think that's actually fair, because I think Carlos has been pretty quick everywhere. It just doesn't seem to be working out for him.
Well, talking of unfair as well, one thing that Charles has said this weekend is he doesn't want people to be referring to him as Charles Leclerc version 2.0. He's like, I haven't just made some sudden massive leap forward. My development rate has been, I think, fairly linear, and I'd agree with him.
I just sighed when I saw the 2.0 tag being brought out again.
I know.
Are we not bored of that one by now? Leclerc's always been rapid. He's always been rapid. He just had a car for the last couple of years that wasn't allowing him to show his speed. But it did on occasion, and he took 2 poles last year in a Ferrari that was really an ordinary car. And the year before, even a P4 in qualifying. I remember in Bahrain, he was flying. He's had some great displays in a very ordinary Ferrari and then a semi-acceptable Ferrari. Now he's got a Ferrari that can fight for the championship, and he's showing what he can do once again. He's got a teammate that is very quick, but maybe not out and out the fastest guy on the grid. He's a great driver, Carlos Sainz, but he's just maybe missing a slight little bit to his teammate in qualifying. Actually, this is the first time this season that Sainz isn't on provisional pole heading on to the final runs in Q3. In both Bahrain and Jeddah, we were one run away from Sainz being on pole.
There you go. That's what's going to do it for him. It's going to flip it. flip it.
He nearly was on provisional pole as well, were it not for the red flag.
Wow, quite.
But that's what I mean about it not quite working out for him. He's clearly got the pace, but it doesn't seem to be working out.
It's about putting it on the board, though, isn't it? In the end, he's got the pace, but Leclerc's got more pace, and he shows it in the final run, where Carlos hasn't been able to deliver right at crunch time. Leclerc maybe holding something back on the first run, not hooking it up, and then he's able to just nail it, whereas both of those times, Sainz has gone out and not improved at the death.
Let's have a little chat about McLaren. Both cars in the top 10. Great job from McLaren this weekend to get there, even if they qualify 9th and 10th now, 8th and 9th now, which I don't think they will. A phenomenal job from McLaren as the session gets underway, and the Mercedes cars are the first out on track.
Ricciardo's ahead of Norris as well for the first time this weekend, I think. Lando's been flying. Daniel's been just looking okay, but a little bit adrift. But for the first time, he's now half a tenth ahead of Lando, and that's got him in 4th position at the moment. Sainz surely will improve and at least fill the gap between Verstappen and Ricciardo, if not more. So that'll be McLaren looking at a 5th place at best. But it's a great job from them, a huge recovery.
It's going to be a little bit of difficult viewing for the Works Mercedes team. Of course, we know the Mercedes power unit is in the back of that McLaren, and for them to be now behind McLaren, who seemed so far off in the first 2 races and in testing in particular, seemed really disheartened. Mercedes seemed a bit like more confident than the McLaren team, but now it looks like the tables have indeed turned. And Mr. Palmer, I have to hold my hands up. You've been promising this would happen for all season.
I just saw the car on track, and it's rare that you see the car in testing straight away and it looks good, and then it's just rubbish, as it looked to be in the Bahrain Grand Prix.
Lewis going very slow.
Russell trying to get his tyre temps up, and a bit frustrated to hold station then behind Hamilton. Just the 2 Mercedes on their outlap now. Perez has followed them out on track, so it's the 3 cars. But yeah, you see the base of a good car at McLaren, and I was bewildered at how much they struggled in Bahrain, and then they came back already in Jeddah, and now they look like the McLaren that I was expecting.
And I'm speaking to Andreas Seidel after that race in Bahrain. He just looked like a heartbroken man. I think he'll be back to his normal smiley self after a performance like this.
Now, are Mercedes going to push, or are they going to have another warm-up lap?
Another warm-up.
It is, isn't it?
Russell weaving already. Hamilton was a bit lazy on the throttle coming out of the final corner, not eager to give it absolute full beat.
Ferrari traditionally wanting the warm-up lap before the flyer as well. Charles Leclerc on a shiny set of new boots.
That's what Rosanna was promised before the start of the session, wasn't she?
Was indeed.
Carlos Sainz had told Rosanna Tennant that we would see Ferrari do its fastest laps on shiny new soft tyres rather than wearing them a little bit and going out on slightly scrubbed tyres. Mercedes did their first run in this session though on scrubbed tyres.
And they're slow. You've got to be on new tyres to be able to qualify. Surely. It's always been the way.
Red Bull likes to go for it from the off. Perez pushing hard. Can he take pole position? Will he have it taken away from him with the penalty for that potential yellow flag infringement? All of that is ifs and buts. We wait to see though how he is through sector 1. It's bolted, it's looking pretty nice. He's got traffic ahead of him though. Through to the end of sector 1 for Sergio Perez. 7 thousandths down, but it's a personal best through that sector for him.
He's found a 10th, a little bit over a 10th from his previous run there. Perez is still a 10th down on Verstappen's best sector 1.
So he's getting tight on time now. So Lewis will pick it up.
Yeah, tell Lewis to speed up. Yeah, copy.
Mercedes want 2 flying laps, and Russell then is with their prep lap as well. They're now thinking it's going to be tight, so Hamilton speeding up, then Russell can speed up behind. Perez's middle sector is good. He's only 7 thousandths off the fastest of anyone. This is going to be right there for Perez.
Through then the final corner for Sergio Perez. And down the start, finish straight. Leclerc's time, a 1:18.239, the time to beat for Checo. Over the line, and misses out by 1/1000th of a second.
1,000th ahead, now 1,000th behind. What is it with Perez today? This time he's on the wrong side of it, and Leclerc remains on provisional pole, but there are going to be improvements further down. Still flying laps to come. Max Verstappen is on an out lap. He's just left the pits. He's going for one attempt. And Leclerc and Carlos Sainz are out as well, but neither of them on flyers at the moment. Here go the Mercedes.
Hamilton 3/10 down after 2 sectors, bouncing around inside that cockpit violently in that Mercedes cockpit. Just 2 corners remain for him, as we said, a 1:18.239. The time of Charles Leclerc to beat. Not sure the Mercedes will get close to that, but he wants to be fighting with the McLarens and the Alpines of Esteban Ocon, who currently sits P5, gets ahead of both. P5 for Lewis Hamilton. For George Russell, it's P4. So Russell up to 4th on a 19.004. Ricardo 5th, Hamilton down to 6th, and it's a good run from George Russell.
Absolutely hats off to George Russell. This is the guy that's taken the most poles in Formula 1 history that he's beating here.
Yeah.
And they've got another flying lap for Lewis to try and recover something. But Russell, throughout their whole time at Mercedes, has been neck and neck with Lewis. That didn't cost Lewis any time, really. He managed to just keep his foot in, a tiny moment of wheel spin, but it didn't really affect too much from him. And he's only half a tenth behind Russell, but testament to Russell that he's even close, let alone ahead.
Yeah, Hamilton and Russell's 3rd sector times almost identical. It's the middle sector where Russell's made that time on Lewis Hamilton. As we switch now to view Max Verstappen, currently P3, 1/10 of a second off on the soft tyre, running through the 1st sector. He was rapid last time out, only mistake in sector 3 costing him that top spot, and he's down.
Not by much though. He's down compared to his last first sector was rapid. He was 1/10 quicker than he is now. But remember, he made that big mistake in sector 3. That's where Max can find the time.
Meanwhile, Carlos Sainz, the second clock on the right-hand side there. Verstappen now is up after 2 sectors, 0.169, back swinging out, and dust kicking up from that Red Bull. This the sector, though, where Verstappen has to keep it clean.
Yeah, Sainz up as well, just behind. So both of them looking to depose Charles Leclerc, who's on a flyer himself. Fastest first sector of anyone from Leclerc. This is it. The dying moments for pole position. Can Max Verstappen get it stopped? Yes, he does. Hooks up the apex, opens up the final corner, and now a drive to the line.
And it's a great run from Max Verstappen. Will this be the provisional pole across the line? It is, by 85 thousandths of a second. Now for Carlos Sainz. Can he move up? No. Final sector is not the one for Carlos Sainz. Stays P9, but Charles Leclerc, P2. Best first sector of anyone. Personal best sector in the 2nd sector. And now, just 2 corners remain for Charles Leclerc. The 1:18.154 is the time of Max Verstappen to beat Leclerc, the championship leader, to take provisional pole position as Norris jumps up for 4th. Checkered flag is out. Leclerc moves to provisional pole by nearly 3/10 of a second with a huge lap, and the Ferrari mechanics cheer, as will the Tifosi around the world, but the bells will not be ringing out in Maranello just yet. Or will they?
That's it. That's
done. Is that it?
That is pole for Charles Leclerc. Carlos Sainz has had a miserable session there. Missed out on that first run with the red flag, and he's made a big mistake in the final sector. We didn't see it, but he's down in 9th. And he's not improving. Sainz is done, and he's in 9th position. Can Hamilton claw something back here?
Will have to be something pretty magic from Lewis Hamilton. P7 at the moment, and over the line for him will be 5th to depose Russell just at the death. But Leclerc deposes the Red Bull threat. It's Leclerc on pole from Verstappen and Perez, with Lando Norris a sensational 4th for McLaren.
And he may well start 3rd if Perez gets a penalty as well. We could have Sainz and Perez starting back.
P1.
Let's go. Oh, nice stop. Nice lap.
It was a great lap. He really hooked it up. Final sector was a beauty for Leclerc. Clawed back huge amount of time on Verstappen, who just couldn't get the final sector quite right. He missed a little bit compared to his best first sector as well, Max. And in the end, he's a good chunk short on pace, nearly 3/10 away from Charles Leclerc. So once again, Verstappen does not take pole position this year. It's 2 for Leclerc, 1 for Perez.
A wonderful job from Charles Leclerc. His 11th pole position in Formula 1. He salutes the crowd. The championship leader is back on pole position. A great run, Sam. A beautiful lap, and Ferrari have looked wonderful all the way through this weekend. Red Bull brought the fight to them today in qualifying, but that lap from Leclerc was something pretty special.
It really was. If the race starts like we're looking at the top 3-4 cars, Red Bull have a strategic advantage over Ferrari in the Grand Prix, but Sergio Perez, I'm not sure he's going to start where we expect him to.
Well, we'll wait and see on that. For the here and the now, though, it is all about this man, fastest around the track here at Albert Park, Charles Leclerc. A brilliant lap, Jolyon. Jumping into the 1 minute 17s, the first lap in the 17s that we've seen this weekend. Just a brilliant drive.
He's in the zone at the moment, isn't he? He's absolutely in the zone. He's accomplished at qualifying. He's taken many poles before, a couple last year, and is second already in 3 races this year. And again, he had to deliver at the death. That final lap in Q3 is where it matters. You can do what you like before, but you've got to improve and find the time. And Leclerc once again has delivered. The pressure's there when you're onto your final run, and it's the difference between starting third or first. And once again, he's on pole, and the crowd love it.
There's a rather exciting bit of the starting grid tomorrow. Fernando Alonso, who's out of place, but we know he's got a fast motor car. Carlos Sainz, he's out of place. Esteban Ocon still sort of struggling. Daniel Ricciardo got a lot to prove. And then the two Mercedes, that whole section, the bottom half of the top 10 is going to be really thrilling to watch. Valtteri Bottas, I think, was a little bit disappointing in qualifying. I think there's more to come from him too.
Well, and if Sergio Perez takes a pen, it'll be P6 for him, meaning the two Mercedes will start 4th and 5th with Lando Norris in 3rd. So yeah, that whole Alonso, Sainz, Ocon, Ricciardo, Perez, that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. We wait to hear from the drivers down there on the grid with Johnny Herbert.
Well, I'm down here with Max Verstappen. Max, second position. How do you feel after that run?
Yeah, not good. I didn't really feel good in the car the whole weekend so far. I think there's not been one lap where I actually felt confident, so a bit of a struggle. Of course, second is still a good result, but just not feeling that great to go to the limit. So we'll try to analyze it.
Yeah, it seems to be a bit of a theme for you. I know yesterday you complained a little bit this morning, but what about race pace? Is that where it's going to be slightly different, do you think? Do you think the balance will come to you?
Yeah, probably in the race pace everything stabilizes a bit, but for me this weekend so far has been all over the place. Of course, happy to be second, but of course, I think also as a team, we want more.
Right. Thanks, Max. Sergio. Hi, mate. 3rd position. After that brilliant pole position you had in Saudi, how did it feel today?
Yeah, it felt good. Q1, Q2, things were going good. With all the red flags, it's always very hard to keep the momentum going. I regret a bit the decision we took going into Q3 with our strategy on the tires, but I think, P3 is a decent start for tomorrow.
And this must be so good for your motivation, getting a pole position, bit of a frustration in the race in Saudi. 3rd here, tomorrow, 2nd row, feeling good with the race pace of the car?
Yeah, hopefully. I think we got a nice race ahead of us, so first of all, I hope we make a lot of Aussies very happy tomorrow because they are, full grandstands already on Saturday, so yeah, hopefully tomorrow we can give them a nice race.
Right, well done, Sergio. And your pole man, everybody. Charles Leclerc, 2nd pole of the season. How did that feel? That looked like an epic lap from you. How was it?
Yeah, it felt good. Even more because it's a track where I've always struggled in the past as a driver. I don't know, it probably doesn't fit me as well. And this weekend we really worked hard. It was a bit messy for the free practices session for me. I managed to do some good laps, but not everything together. And in Q3 I managed to put everything together, so it feels great, and very happy to be starting on pole tomorrow.
Yeah, and it's a great position obviously to start on pole position, sandwiched by the 2 Red Bulls, but you've been on the pace basically all the way through sort of yesterday and today now with that pole position. For the race, how do you feel the car set up? Because when I see it on track, she looks nice to drive, is she?
Yeah, the car is nice to drive, but the Red Bull were very quick in FP2 during the long fuel run, but to be honest, we were again quite surprised by our pace in qualifying. So everything is possible tomorrow. We just need to do a good start, and then hopefully we can keep that 1st position.
Yeah, well, I think it's been a very popular pole position, and that crowd went well for you. Well done.
Well, a phenomenal job there from Charles Leclerc and from Ferrari. Their first pole here for 15 years. An astonishing job.
Who was the last pole sitter? Michael Schumacher?
Kimi, 2007. And he won.
There we go.
And he won the championship.
Well, there is, of course, that wonderful statistic as we bounce on board with Carlos Sainz. A wonderful statistic that every time... Oh, and there's where it went wrong.
Disaster. Disaster.
That is Sainz blowing a chance for pole. Not only that, ending up in 9th with a huge moment at turn 10. Got wide on the curve and lost traction. And at high speed, you don't want to be having that amount of opposite lock. He had to bail right out of the throttle. And that is why Sainz is down in 9th. So it's going to be for the first time this year, it's going to be a very different mood in Ferrari. One driver chuffed to pieces with another pole, championship lead, all looking great. The other one that is on the back foot is not even there to help him this time. And there's going to be more pressure now coming for Sainz.
And imagine, had that red flag just come out a second, 2 seconds later, he would have got that first lap on the board, maybe not had the pressure that it was an all or nothing lap at the end of the session, and ultimately puts it in the gravel.
And even if it hadn't come together, he'd have still been up there or thereabouts in the top 4 grid positions, and that would have allowed him to get into the fight with the Red Bulls to help out Charles Leclerc and actually try and go out and take that fight to them. So that strategic advantage right now is with Red Bull.
Well, we'll have to wait and see, won't we, how the opening laps work out, how the new DRS zones at the circuit work out. The sunlight not working out for the photographers down there at the moment. They're going to be miserable with that. But it is all working out for Charles Leclerc. His reaction on the radio, probably everything you need to know right now about this young man. No massive exuding sort of cheering on the radio, just a very calm, very measured sort of recognition of, yeah, we're here, we know we're quick, this is what we're doing. I think that looks an awful lot like Casey Stoner. It is. Of course, legend on 2 wheels. And Charles Leclerc gets another pole position trophy. 11 poles now for Charles Leclerc. And Sam, as you were saying, he doesn't have the support tomorrow in the form of Carlos Sainz, but that Ferrari is rapid. Red Bull's looking rather nice as well. And a surprise in the form of McLaren, Jolene.
Yeah, and I still think Norris will start 3rd tomorrow. Just looking at the replay of Perez go through the yellow flag, I cannot see that he's not going to get a penalty for it, which is going to mean it's just a Leclerc-Verstappen shootout from the start tomorrow. Norris, if he gets on podium tomorrow, it would just be the best success McLaren could have hoped for. He's not going to be challenging the top 2. He's going to be hoping they challenge each other to a huge extent. But and now Leclerc has to switch focus and think, how is he going to beat Max? Because it's one thing taking pole. The job, as we know from this year, is not over until the last corner of the last lap tomorrow. So he's given himself a great shot. He's calm, he's cool, because I think he knows there's still loads more work to come.
And he'll probably be thankful that we have just the 3 DRS detection points rather than the 4 DRS zones, I should say, 2 DRS detection points. But there's a little bit less opportunity for those DRS moves. It's going to be a great race, though. Cannot wait for it, because your championship leader, Charles Leclerc, will start from pole position, the 11th of his career, the 2nd of the season, with the 2 Red Bulls at the moment behind him. Max Verstappen 2nd, Sergio Perez 3rd, but with a big dark cloud hanging over Sergio Perez, given that potential yellow flag infringement in qualifying. Norris, an outstanding 4th for McLaren, ahead of Lewis Hamilton and George Russell for Mercedes. Daniel Ricciardo, excellent in 7th for McLaren. Then Ocon in the Alpine P8. Sainz disappointing and disappointed with 9th. Fernando Alonso should have been better than 10th, but a failure on the car, ultimately calling an early end to his day. Gasly P11, Bottas ending that incredible run of Q3 appearances in 12th, and Tsunoda and Joe. Mick Schumacher 15th ahead of Albon. Magnussen disappointed to be 17th. Vettel 18th. Latifi and Stroll making contact, and down there in 19th and 20th. Well, folks, do not miss a moment of the broadcast tomorrow. We will be coming to you live from the track with your pre-race show at 1400 local time. The race 1 hour later at 1500 local time. The post-race show around about 1700 or pretty much whenever the race finishes, and the podium has concluded. Next though, it's the post-qualifying show, so do please stick around here on F1 TV. But for now, from us in the commentary box, thanks so much for joining us. The post-qualifying show comes right along. Enjoy, and we'll see you tomorrow.